we all
Right.
have psychic abilities, but he doesn't know he has psychic abilities.
Yes.
And we're still not sure what happened. We don't know if it was like a weird timeline crossover or if it was like an imposter or prankster energy.
Generation X Paranormal.
Well, everybody, welcome back.
Hey, everyone.
We're Generation X Paranormal. I'm Logan,
I'm Nicole.
and we have a good show today.
Yes, we do.
I think they're all good, but this one is good too. Mm-hmm. We're not holding anything back, I promise, guys. Today we are talking to Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, and I know you've got a lot of information about her, or just some kind of heads up information. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Kimberly.
Okay, so Dr. Kimberly McGeorge is an internationally renowned naturopathic doctor, energy healer, remote viewer, and a paranormal expert, and a consciousness teacher. For the past 25 years, she has worked on thousands of people around the world.
Man, that's awesome.
So we're going to kind of get into all these things and learn what they are.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's bring on Kimberly.
Okay, let's talk to her.
Well, hey, Kimberly, how you doing?
I'm good. It's hot over here. How are you guys?
We're doing good. Actually,
warm.
It's pretty warm out here too.
Yeah.
We're in Missouri, and it's been
It's by the country, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you know, at the time of this recording, we've had some pretty crazy weather in this area over the last couple of days. So it's nice to see the sun.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, even if it's really hot, but it is nice.
Yeah, it's muggy and warm, and I think everybody's lawn's overgrown and all that stuff. So, but listen, thank you so much for coming on. We're real excited to talk to you.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know there's so many things out there that you could speak on, but let's learn a little bit about you.
Sure. So I was born with natural, pretty high level psychic abilities. My strongest ability when I was a child was the ability to see not just human discarnates, but at the time, now I know they were negative ETs and malevolent demonic energies, as well as human discarnates, positive and negative, and to remote view. Also, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but also to astral travel out of my body pretty naturally and easily. So had all those abilities. Really learned, pretty early, around 5 or 6, that not everybody functioned like I did. So I shut a lot of it down. Didn't really bring it out again until college, when I got away from my family. And I thought, I could bring some of this out. So it was kind of like the dog and pony show. People would come to me for, what is my life purpose? And, is my fiance gonna, is my boyfriend gonna ask me to marry him? And does this guy like me? Does this girl like me? Is my boyfriend cheating? All that kind of fun college stuff. And I developed enough of a reputation in college that I attracted the attention of the police department in the area, who at the time was forming what they called occult crime units. And so I worked as a psychic medium for the occult crime units for a while, which sounds way more glamorous and fun than it is. It's actually pretty gross and traumatic, but had some interesting experiments and really learned a lot. And obviously got immediate feedback with my own abilities when, they know things I don't know and I'm independently confirming them, and that I'm taking them places through remote viewing, that they couldn't find easily on their own, or that would have taken them longer. So that was really an interesting experience, very, like I said, very traumatic, very low pain, but interesting nonetheless. Very rarely and occasionally I'm still called in weird crime scenes. One of the last things, maybe a year ago, I got called in was a woman had disappeared in Ohio, and nobody could find her. And, they wanted to find her if she was alive. So they called me and they said, was she dead or alive? And I said, well, she's talking to me. And the way she's talking to me, she's showing me water. So you need to go search all immediate bodies of water immediately in the area, but I'm pretty sure she's dead. And it's hard when they're so visceral to sometimes sort if they're living or dead, because I can talk to living people or dead by merging with them. So I don't always know if they're living or dead. But anyway, they found her and her boyfriend. They'd driven into the lake late at night, and they drowned with their seatbelts on in their truck underwater. So that was accurate information. So like I said, occasionally I still help out. Usually I don't charge money because obviously these are people's family and lives. So I can, when I'm asked, but don't advertise that and don't officially do it. I got away a little bit from that. I actually did a lot of exorcisms in college as well. Really got into possession and entity attachment and haunted locations and space and house clearing, but then got into the natural health side of things. Eventually became a naturopathic doctor, herbalist. I became well known for that, had clinical practices in Columbus, Ohio. All during that time, though, my children were born and they were very psychic and very gifted. And so we worked together and we would do house clearings together and some psychic work together, which was really nice as they got older. And I was psychic medium for Shane Pittman's group. I always say before he was famous, so Shane knows me and my abilities quite well. Yeah, he's a good guy. I love him. And, I know a lot of the, big groups, the big paranormal groups and a lot of paranormal groups all over the world, really. But got out of the paranormal because, you guys obviously know a lot about it. It's a very dark, heavy, oppressive, and you get under a lot of attack when you do some of these things and you go some of these places. So that got kind of old for me, and I kind of went into consciousness more and exploring more of the basic questions of life. Why are we here? Do we have souls? Do we live forever? Do I have past lives? And then I did used to believe in ETs or aliens, but I went way down the rabbit hole on that. And, again, you could, there's a lot of things we could talk about, but that's a whole nother story. So now I teach consciousness. I'm still a naturopathic doctor, got way into technology. One of the patent holders on a PMF device, which is frequency based, called the Halo, have had 2 or 3 of my own apps. And now I still, work with frequency apps and frequencies. So that's kind of a short, weird, wandering synopsis of what I do.
Yeah, that is such a
wide range.
A wide range.
But
yeah. Keeping that in mind, I guess you kind of covered it, but what was your first like, holy crap, this is a paranormal experience? Obviously you talked a little bit about kind of in the very beginning, you knew that you were sensitive, but what was that first, like, this is it, something's not quite the same, and what kind of got you started?
Really, it started as an adult or started as a child, because there's really a distinctive line there. I'll tell you what has been, I think, the reminder sometimes when I've tried to live just 3D, when I was, like a mom raising my kids, was one of the most common things that used to happen to me quite often, which always brought me back to my abilities and reminded me, was I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be a dark hooded figure standing, like 6 inches to my right or closer. And I would like scream and I'd be like, call 911, because what people don't understand, even if you're psychically gifted and you can see things, is when you're woken up out of sleep, your mind can't process that fast. You don't know if that's like a real danger, like you need to call the police,
Right.
Or if that's a paranormal danger and you need to handle it a different way. So that's always it's been this sudden appearance of like these discarnates, and it still happens. Like I'll be, I could be talking to you guys. It happens all the time. And I have shows where we've been recording live and all of a sudden I have the host's grandmother standing beside me. And so it's always been, no matter how much I lull into or try to lull into normal everyday life, it's this sudden appearance of these beings, and not just human discarnates, but where I live now, which is a habitation site, you pull in and the Sasquatch come to the edge of the forest. I just got a picture yesterday and you can see it's like a silverback gorilla. You can actually see their hair and the silver sheen of their hair. And it's things like that. That's always just this, physicality of these beings that other people don't see. And it's so physical to me. And I can usually prove it with pictures too. And so that's always been my like, holy cow, I have these wild abilities that not everybody has. But at the same time, as I say that, you guys, I believe we're, we call it 3D, but I believe we're actually at like a 4.4D or higher frequency, and that people are waking up and people's abilities are naturally turning on without taking classes or anything. There's this thing in the news, I don't know if you guys have seen it, about the demonic faces. People are like seeing demonic faces and face changing, and the government saying it's a sickness. It's not a sickness. Their abilities are turning on, and they're seeing. You watch almost any video, like I could probably just pick a random video of you two and watch both you and your guests, and I can watch both alters, which is things that, personalities that we create from inside us coming over our faces, as well as human discarnates and other beings, crossing over people's faces. And so I think a lot of us are going to be able to clearly see it. And then I can play those videos back to classes and they'll see the same thing. But I always say, if you don't look, you can't see. Half of the lack of paranormal abilities is people aren't looking.
Right.
They don't look up. They don't see the tips above their house. They don't look at the corners of the room and say, why is there a shadow there and there's not a shadow there? They don't, like I tell people, lay in their bed at night, shut their door, leave their hall light on, and look at the beings moving underneath your door. They don't look. They don't see.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
That's something we talk about on every episode, almost with every
yeah,
guest.
we really do.
Just because so many people, we always ask, what's your first paranormal experience? Because everybody has one, and it usually comes from childhood. And, once you have that as a child, like we are all, like we have the podcast because we both had it as children, and almost every guest has had something, and they're searching, and so they're more open to it. So we are open to it, and we get more things happen to us. I mean, you don't want to happen to us, but I mean, we're seeing it.
For sure.
Because we're open to it. A lot of people are just not.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big proponent and believer in frequency because, number one, it's measurable. A lot of people don't realize that so much of the things that we talk about in paranormal and things like that, granted, there's the whole woo-woo stuff. I get it. But there's also scientific measurements behind a lot of the things that we can do. And I think what's happened with, and I know I've said this a few times on our show, but I think what's happened with us is whether we've done it as a culture, society, all that kind of thing, whatever have you, but we've allowed ourselves to kind of back away from that, I guess, for lack of better words, that third eye, that ability to see things and be a part of things that are not in the everyday normal that you encounter every day. And I think that's what kept us alive before we ever had houses and all these different things that kept us alive. I think that's where we've lost a lot. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And just going back to you as a child, I can't imagine how terrifying that was, like tuning into your abilities and seeing this stuff all the time. Like I always think I take care of young kids. So I always think about that aspect, and I had my own experience as a kid that terrified me. And I always think about, those of you that are sensitive, like how do you get through childhood that way? It just, I don't know. It makes me feel sorry for you in a way.
It's neat though, because my children, had similar experience. Really, my one daughter, I say like her life is like the ghost whisperer. She sees 100% of the time. So she had to learn to completely turn it off because all she has to do is flip it on. And their spirits are everywhere, like in the street and in the windows of every houses. And like this dimension is saturated with them. And I'm really glad. I'd almost rather have the pop in, pop out. And even now, even though I've developed my psychic abilities a lot more and I have a lot more control of them, I still don't see 100% of the time. Again, I kind of have to look to see, whereas she just can see, if that makes any sense. And
it does.
And, they all had beings came and sat on them. My one daughter had this really cool experience. My youngest daughter, when she was an older teenager and she was living with her boyfriend, she got up and went to work. And, bye, babe, blah, 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 went to work. And an hour later, he turned over in bed and she was in bed beside him. And he said, I thought you went to work. And she said, no, I didn't go to work. And then the woman disappeared.
Wow.
And he's not even a believer, or, we all have psychic abilities, but he doesn't know he has psychic abilities.
Yes.
And we're still not sure what happened. We don't know if it was like a weird timeline crossover or if it was like an imposter or prankster energy. This area is so complicated because okay, so let's see, we do see, and let's say someone's grandma does appear who looks like someone's grandma. It gets way, way more complicated because it might not be someone's grandma.
Right.
It might be a prankster energy pretending to be someone's grandma. It might be a demon pretending to be someone's grandma. It might be my dead sister pretending to be someone's grandma. Like, it might be a negative ET or a positive. Like, there's so many types, or an elemental. Like, there's so many types of beings, and they have this ability to shapeshift so easily, especially when we're not talking about, hardcore physicality like a skinwalker or something.
Right.
And so a lot of the paranormal teachings or people's experiences, they're valid experiences, but they may not be able to discern the subtleties that somebody's more practiced at and can recognize frequency. So there's a frequency range that human discarnates fall into that dogmen and Sasquatch don't fall into, that little people and fae don't fall into, that negative or positive ET races, depending on where they're from, also don't fall into. So everything has a specific, all the insects are within a range, all the trees are within a range, and so you can learn with or without technology, because we are the technology, and of course, ultimately, we created the technology, but you can learn, to have that degree of sensitivity. So you're like, yeah, dude, I don't think you're anybody's grandma. Like, show me who you are.
Right,
And,
yeah.
there's very few people at that level in this field. There's a man, which I don't know if you've had him on your show or not, and I'm not going to say who it is, but some people will be able to figure out. But he teaches and speaks a lot in incubus succubus, which cracks me up and makes me want to roll on the floor laughing. I've talked about this on other shows because he's visited by incubus and succubus every night. But that's not the perspective he's sharing from. He's sharing from the perspective that he can help you with incubus succubus. I guarantee you he doesn't even know he's being visited. And this is where there's a big difference between studying the paranormal and experiencing
Yeah.
on a daily basis for years and years and years and years, and applying critical thinking. And I think where I come in that really surprises, I am super woo-woo. I could, tell you guys story after story after story, and you'd be like, that woman's crazy, like way out there stories. But then I come back to the hardcore science, and I write software programming, and I question everything.
Absolutely.
I don't believe even now what I see. And one of the things we're seeing, and I know this is probably not on topic, but I think it's important to bring up, is extreme violation of everybody's field. So we're taught in religion that, first of all, I was taught you can't be possessed, right? Because you are already possessed by the Holy Spirit. So you can't be possessed with more than one thing. And I'm using that facetiously and a little bit loosely.
Sure.
But, you can be possessed by hundreds of things, thousands of things, and groups of things. And it's so funny because we're just seeing such a high degree of beings that are not you or your core soul frequency. I'm not saying you guys are possessed, but you could be. I haven't looked. But, even I get jumped. It's so easy to get jumped. I go in Walmart, which I try not to go in, and I get jumped. I come home and I'm jumped. I have other beings that are not me, either in my energy field that came along for the ride or inside my body, because we're not taught the truth about what this is.
Right.
We're taught, all this mystical stuff, fearfully and wonderfully made from religion and all this really medical junk, from the medical field. But all it is it's a water bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
Tons of things can jump in, or be poured out at any moment. And, we can even be half in and half out of our body. So we're holding our body and we call them shove-ins. You've been shoved aside and other things have stepped in. So I don't think paranormal, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of like taking over this topic, but I don't think sometimes we ask the right questions or get down to the hardcore nitty gritty. Like, nobody wants really, I don't feel, to know what's happening really in the paranormal world. Does that make sense?
No, it makes
Absolutely
perfect
makes sense.
And I got to admit that if there was ever going to be anything that jumped me spiritually, it probably would be at Walmart. But
Yeah.
but no, I think it makes perfect sense. The other thing that I find that's interesting is people who, and I like when you say experience and study the paranormal, but I feel like there's way too many silos too. I think a lot of things ebb and flow. I think a lot of things are related to each other. And I think that sometimes it gets way too much convoluted that, well, it's got to be this or it can't be that. And I think that the second you do that, that's when you realize that you're missing so much of the bigger picture, in my personal opinion anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
we just recently talked to Mike Ricksecker, and it was funny when you were talking about, you know, and it's funny, he actually had a similar story where somebody saw someone else and said, "Hey, I thought you went somewhere."
Yeah,
and then,
it was like a time slip.
yeah, it was like
he
a time
talking
slip,
about.
and he was looking
Oh,
at it as stacked.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the theory goes is stacked time, so you have many, many different layers of time, but they
Of
all
course.
are happening at the same time.
Yep.
And there's a way that if it slips, that may still have been, and again, it could be demonic. We never know, but sometimes you also
Right,
have to think
right.
about if it's not, could it potentially be something like a time slip? But if you don't open your mind to that, you're automatically going to say, okay, well, it only involves the ghost world. When you don't
Right. That's true.
Right, and you don't realize that there could be so many different variables at play, and I think that's one thing with paranormal. I've noticed that over the years that everybody just wants to be siloed into one different thing, and I think that ends up being, first of all, you don't get innovation, you don't get all these different things, and you lose
True.
out on talking to people like yourself and all these other different people that bring so much more to the table. So I'm just getting really long-winded, but it just kind of,
No, I think we need to stop being like, I'm a demonologist and I'm this and I'm that and
yeah.
I'm an expert. And I think we need to come together and be like, we all have pieces or a piece of the puzzle. And I think if we all openly, without judgment and without prejudice, could have like more panel or roundtable discussions
Yep.
and be like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I work a lot with, I'm one of my top gifts is with timelines. I understand a lot about, I call it non-time, non-space, but we call it time here. But so I'm very well aware with that, but a lot of people aren't. But somebody might say, I never thought about that.
Right.
Somebody might say, I never thought it could have been this. Or I might, if I didn't have the demonic background, I might say, I never thought it could be a demon. I only thought there was ghosts. So I think just opening our minds and understanding that this is a very complex reality, and by no means do I have it all figured out. I learn every day. And I get introduced to, new things every day, and I change my mind based on new evidence. And some people don't change their mind; they just double down.
Yes.
Right.
No, it's only this. And I like to change my mind based on the evidence.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned your right software, and I'm actually, my day job, I'm a network engineer, and I find it interesting sometimes that some of the people that work in like algorithmic jobs, things that can do that, maybe analytical, I think sometimes it makes it easier because you can follow that algorithm down without going, okay, well, if it's not this, it's that, or you start looking at a bigger picture for analytics. So I always find that interesting that some of the people we run into, they do have that sort of a background, either whether
It's true, actually.
engineering or any of these different things. So anyway, I tangented a little bit. I just, for some reason, that analytical thing came up, and it just kind of sparked me anyway. But at any rate, so we had talked about some of the things that we really want to explore with you, and again, looking at your diverse background, obviously we could go
For hours,
yeah, we could
probably.
spend 7 hours on this, and we certainly want to do that to you. But I think some of the stuff that we find interesting, at least I do for sure. Number one, the naturopathy, being able to do that. That, first of all, I find that amazing.
We need a lot more of that, actually.
Yeah, and I was a medic in the Army, so I don't
Oh, wow.
I don't discount Western medicine and all those sort of things. I know they exist. I know there's a lot of things that can be gleaned and taken from it, and I know it's important.
Right.
But on the same token, I also think that if you can't be part of the nature part of it, I think you miss a lot of things that could be healing and all these sort of things. But of course, definitely the subject matter expert. So, but in that vein, kind of the frequency healing, I find that incredibly, I guess, fascinating because, and of course my audience knows this, but I deal a lot with, PTSD and all these other things, and I find that,
Trauma.
yeah, and I'll go on, and I know it's dumb, but I'll go on YouTube and I'll find some of those frequency channels where it's like a healing frequency, And honestly, it does really impact me. It helps my mood, and it helps me kind of,
I use it as well.
yeah. I
To
find that
calm.
interesting. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so of course there's tons and tons of frequencies, and one of the things I see in people's fields, because I run a lot of scans every week, every month of the year, is it's funny you bring up trauma because we see a lot of fear, but we also have a lot of trauma, and you at least have a solid, this what we call this incarnation, experience that you can, like my dad does, he was in Vietnam, that you guys can assign it to, this is why I have a trauma, or I was beat as a child, this is why I have trauma. So you have this physicality to your trauma, but there's a lot of people, what's really fascinating, and I think a good proof for previous lives, is there's a lot of people that have had the most amazing lives. Like, they're like, I've been charmed,
Right.
I've had amazing, friends and family, and I have a good marriage, and, I'm happy, and I've never been even depressed. Like, some of these people are charmed people, but you look in their fields frequency wise, and you see this tremendous amount of trauma. Well, some of that's going to be collective trauma, because I believe we're all one. So, we all come from the same place. So we're all one, and we have this, micro and macro connection to each other in different levels in different ways. But I also see people I believe people are bringing in trauma from what I call all time and space up till now, which really it is all now. But, they're bringing in that trauma from their past life. If you believe in past lives and you died by a gunshot wound in the streets of the Wild West, you're going to have that trauma. Like, that's going to be traumatic. Right. You're like bleeding out on the streets. Nobody cares. They throw you in a hole and, move on with their lives. It's traumatic. And, we have a lot of evidence to, people that do get memories of their past lives or do go under hypnosis, which is a whole nother debated subject, though, they often have birthmarks, in places where they have the memories of being shot, or, discoloration, or different, or bumps or lumps that are unexplainable, even by the medical profession, in areas of their final wounding, whether it's head or body or whatever. So, there's a lot of evidence for that. But one of the things that I believe is the root of a lot of diseases and the dysbiosis in the body is that fear trauma state with, the vagus nervous system, and the nervous system always being what I call screaming on. And I don't know if you're hypervigilant, but there's a lot of people that have never been consciously in the daytime military or at any dangerous jobs or adrenaline filled jobs that are hypervigilant. And we live these lives and we're just on edge. We're kind of like, even if we're not like physically looking around, it's like our energy field is, on hyper alert. And so this is also ties into psychic abilities, because we find that if we can work with the vagus nervous system and get your nervous system off and relaxed, guess what starts happening? You become more psychic. Because when you're in a trauma, as state, in a hypervigilant state, you don't have a lot of room for a lot of other things. You don't have that silent mind that you can get new insights and ideas, or, analytical thoughts. And you don't have the space and the peace in your life that you have time to go sit in the woods and connect with little people or fairies or Sasquatch or even human discarnates or ETs, whatever you want to connect with. Like, you have to have you can't be trying to survive. Many of us have, I've had obsessive compulsive, times in my life. I've had panic attacks in stores. I've been depressed. And I'm going to tell you, during those phases of my life, I didn't really care. There could have been 80 ghosts. You're having a panic attack. You don't care. There could have been a demon on my back. I don't care. I'm having this panic attack. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot to why we don't find more of the answers in our own lives, why we don't even spiritually connect, why we don't understand our purpose, because all these big questions of life, I think, takes like a centering, kind of like the Eastern religions, more like a centering and a quiet, silent mind. And you have to have peace. Now we have space. You have to have space to think and meditate and discover and explore and really then, find some answers, in this chaos that we live in today's society that is encouraged. We don't have that space. Right. And so, I have a lot of compassion. A long time ago, I made a lot of free frequency tracks and meditations for PTSD, partially because I come from a military family, and one of my uncles committed suicide that was a pilot because of the military. And so I have a lot of compassion for where that trauma, associated with daytime military can take whoever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of what you said resonates, obviously, but what's interesting is the trauma and the PTSD that I experienced in the military. I held for a very long time, and I was really capable of keeping it at
That's
bay for the
good.
most part. But then two things happened in my life. One, I ended up with cancer. I had thyroid cancer. So
Oh, wow.
there was that to deal with. And then about two
Wow.
and a half years ago or so, I had a brain bleed. So
Whoa.
it has been those two, I guess basically those two incidences. And then you throw the past into it, it was way too much for me to handle. So, you know, one of the things that I find kind of funny is we started Generation X Paranormal shortly after that because one, we've had a lot of paranormal things that have happened, but I guess now I find myself kind of on a quest, to find
Mm.
answers for a lot of different things. And that's one of the reasons that we started it. But again, long-winded to get to. Um, I find that I don't get me wrong, all the medications and all the other things that I've been on and still are on, I get it. It's not a problem. But I find that not just with like therapy, but I find like you said, a quiet space. If I can get into, like we've got the Calm app, I can throw the Calm app. If I can get in a nice quiet space, work on my breathing, if I can center myself and kind of get back to as much homeostasis as I can get to, I find that so much more helpful than pop a benzo or something like that, which
Right.
I don't do. And if somebody does and it works, hey, that's fine, that's great. But I have found that I get a lot more out of that than I do, the traditional route. So now I completely understand that does resonate quite a bit with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And people always say, how can I act? Like I said, one of my most common questions is, um, how do I activate my psychic abilities? And when we scan people, it comes up all the time. Time alone in nature, and that's without
Hmm.
your phone, you guys.
Yes.
And just time alone. Like, and if you have families, I have 4 children, so I've been there, and I have a lot of dogs now. But if you have families, it's easy to not make that time
Hmm.
alone. But again, if you don't listen, you can't hear, And
Right.
so, where do we have that time built in to even get an insight? Or, people are like, how do I connect with my soul family? Well, you don't have time. I mean, you have to have the space and time to do that. And it's the simplest things that can make the most profound differences. And to me, nature, when I was going through more of the emotional, psychological issues I faced, nature was such a healing balm to
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
It's just so soothing. Thankfully I'm able to live in nature now, and it makes a big difference compared to living in a suburb or a city. And
Yeah.
I think I just, find a lot of peace, sitting on my deck looking up at a black sky where the only thing you can see is not the city lights, but,
Yeah.
the tops of the trees and the, mountains and the stars. Like, that's just a total different world than most of us live in. We go on vacation there, we go on vacation to the beach, but, I think we need to, especially those of us that have been more traumatized or have faced really challenging issues, I think we need to also create what I call a sacred space. And you can do that in the city. Because also when we scan people, surprisingly enough, your house, of course, has its own energy. So people's spaces come up. They come up asking to be feng shuied. They come up asking, of course, to be cleared.
Right.
They come up asking for you to burn sage or diffuse essential oils or keep your house cleaner or get rid of junk. So the spaces in your environment also can hold you in a calmer nervous system,
Yeah.
and I'm not criticizing anyone's house, because I'm kind of a mad scientist. I have like stacks of papers and stacks of books, and it's probably not the best for my mental health, but it's kind of the way I work. But really, the Japanese, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the Japanese or Korean shows. There's
Yes.
something so soothing
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
about just having a room and everything's clean and white, and there's just a couch. You know what I mean? And there's just something about, I love the trend. Actually, we're getting away from the trend of overbuilding big mansions, and people are
Yeah.
now saying They don't want big mansions and 7 cars and 8,
Yeah.
and 8 houses. They understand that that's stress, and they want more of a simple life,
Yes.
and a lot of people, as you guys know, are going toward van living, and they're going toward, smaller houses, 800 square foot, 400 square, tiny homes, is a big trend.
Uh-huh.
And I'm delighted to see that, because I think we're coming back to, what do I want to work hard for? Do I want to work hard to pay the car insurance, on 2 or 3 cars? I was talking to my dad the other day, and my first make it thing, I used to, when I was young, drive by car dealers. And I'm like, how do people like walk in a car dealer and like buy a car with cash? Like, that was just so impressive to me that there's people in the world that could do that.
Yeah.
And so when I made it, of course, what do? I walk in a car dealer, even though I had a car, and I bought a car with cash, and it was a sports car, of course. And I'm one person, and I have 2 cars, right? Guess what, you guys? I have never met any person that can drive 2 cars at the same time.
Nope.
So one of my cars is always sitting in the garage with a huge insurance payment.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm working for this. I'm, doing more radio shows. I'm teaching more classes. I'm doing more psychic readings, taking time away. You have a family, from my family, to have 2 cars sitting in the garage. So I had to get like really real with myself. Like, how do I want to live? What do I want to work for? How hard do I want to work? And again, do we even have time to think about these questions if we don't have that? If you're just worried about getting through the day and not being anxious, or not having intrusive thoughts, or not being depressed, you don't have time to wrestle with even how you set up your life,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's yeah.
Well, you
Again,
buy a bigger house, you got to buy more stuff to fill it.
that's right.
And I saw something a long time ago.
Yep.
Yeah, they just talk about as you start out, you keep getting bigger and bigger and more and more and more. Then by the end of your life, you have to get rid of all of it, and you go backwards.
Yep.
Because
do.
you get older, you have to get the smaller house. You got to get rid of everything. And I'm like, that sounds crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, why do we do that?
Well, progress.
Well, I mean, some people have kids and stuff. You have to have a bigger house, but that's
true.
like what makes you successful.
It does.
At least in America, that's what we think.
Well, that's that definition.
Yeah.
And I think we're coming away from that. Even some of the big billionaires, have said, they got rid of all their cars. They live in a very sparse apartment. Some of them even will hold up their one knife and say, I have one knife. A lot of, I think it's the dopamine, chasing the dopamine hits too.
Yes.
Which we're so, with social media, with gaming, we have so many gamers, they're chasing, you get so used to the dopamine, and you think buying stuff, and it does, it gives you a dopamine hit. I've had that dopamine hit, but it goes really, really quick. And then you're like, oh gosh, what do I have to do to get that next dopamine hit? So I think, I just think there's so much more important things. And that's one thing I do love about the paranormal and the esoteric. I think it drives you to ask some of the deeper spiritual questions.
For
really.
sure.
And, we all came in here alone. We're all going to leave alone. It doesn't matter if you're married or not, with someone or not, have children or not.
Yep.
You end up at some point in your life, you can do it now, you guys, or you can do it on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But we all end up wrestling with these big questions about life and death.
For sure.
I'd rather get started early.
Yeah. Well, and I think it all comes down to intention, and intention being kind of your energy and what you're putting out. And I love some of the things that I know one of the things that you speak about, and I'd like you to expand a little bit about it, but what is it that you mean when you say energy never lies?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it briefly, in that everything has a frequency. And one of the things, I think there's a lack of discernment, not just in the paranormal industry, but in every industry. And, truth has a frequency. And so, again, if you can read frequency, and everything's, light, color, and sound, everything's energy. If you can read frequency, you're not going to get fooled really easily. All these big questions don't become so complicated, because you can, we really have access to all information at any time. You just have to learn to read it. All this information, we also have access to all the money at any time. I mean, there's billions of dollars going by you guys right now in the air, and going by me, as they're, the invisible money's transferred between, who knows where and who knows what. And so there's all this information in the field available at any time because there is no time and no space. Time is non-local and everything's right here. And so it's the programming that makes you think there aren't answers. It's the programming that makes you think that you need somebody else to be an expert and tell you more than what you're born knowing, because your easiest access psychic ability is what we have the first breath we take, which is your knowing. We all have this intrinsic knowing. And as you learn more about the world, you'll realize that, the things that you thought you chose was actually your knowing or remembering of who you are as a, soul fragment of what I call the all. And so some people say these kids that are born that can they're like 3 and they can play like genius piano things, amazingly. People are like, oh, well, that's because that's who they were in their past life. And that may be true or may not be true. But I think it's deeper than that. I think if you've been a musician through all time and space for trillions of years, you're going to be a musician because you found out you loved music. And,
Right.
and you probably are going to love music for a long, 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 long time. And maybe you'll add something. Maybe you'll go and explore something else. But we aren't taught that we're these ancient, eternal beings. And so as you realize, like, for example, me, when I was, 5 years old, I wanted to be a doctor or a nurse, and I ended up being a naturopathic doctor and energy healer and all this stuff. But then as I got my memory back about who I was, in my past and what I call through all time and space, I've been a healer many, many places. I'm renowned as a healer in other places, other races, other ET races, whether you believe in that or not. And so it wasn't that I was choosing randomly, I'm going to try, healing. It was, I was remembering, as my frequency came up, as I purified my field, as I connected, as I got quiet and reconnecting, because we're memory wiped. The Van Allen belts is technology that keeps our frequency down here, keeps us here in the, in reincarnation cycle. And, they have a ton of different technology that memory wipes us constantly throughout the day and every night. So this is a place of forgetting. They don't want us to remember who we are because we'd all be like, oh, I get this.
Yeah.
I'm going to craft my life exactly the way I want. I understand how it works. And, everything would change if we all really remembered who we were and understood who we were. So even the things I'm saying can be programmed into neutral AI technology and asked, true or false, are we eternal beings? Do we, I was taught, through religion that you're randomly born one time and then you die and that's it. You get 30, 20, 80, 40, whatever years, and then you go to heaven, you're shuttled off to the old person's equivalent home called heaven. But it's been so freeing to realize that I'm so much more than that. And that my life path actually reflects more a path of remembering than it does of even choice. It's like coming back to yourself. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. For like when you find your true passion, you feel,
Yeah. Well,
you just feel that sense like of who you are.
for sure. And
Right.
first of all, I am going to have a meme or something made that says truth has a frequency and it can be read.
I love that.
I love that.
I love that. I love that you're going to do that. That's
That
great.
is so
It can.
awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. That may be the title of this. But anyway,
Oh.
no, I agree 100%. It's, when you think about it, just on a purely physical sense, everything has a frequency. Everything generates a frequency. Your thoughts are a frequency. They're electrical frequency. Whether it's analog or digital, there's still some sort of frequency behind it. Even if you're, and by the way, we do 100% believe in ghosts because we're paranormal, but we also believe we believe in the UFOs and all these things.
Well, I'm believing more and more
Yeah.
each day.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
I'm almost at that point where like anything I've ever heard now exists.
Yeah,
in my head.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, you really got to tune out some of
I
it.
love that.
But
I love that.
but what I find so interesting is you can find a parallel almost on every single one of these levels when it comes to frequency. Ghost, you can, if you believe in that sort of thing, there's a frequency that's created behind that. We have measurements that we can measure with these things. The other thing is UFOs. Like if anybody watches Skinwalker Ranch, despite the fact that they shoot 80,000 rockets into the air, they also are able to pick up on a frequency every single time they have a UFO that shows up.
That's true.
So I think that there's so much to be said behind that frequency and frequency healing. And I think that we discount that so much because everything, you forget that everything has a frequency. One of the things that I've seen, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you go on YouTube, which by the way, I spend way too much time on YouTube, but if you go on there, there's a video that shows the frequency of every planet and their sound. And if you've ever seen that,
I've seen some of that.
First of all, Jupiter, mortifying. But, you look at these things and you think about the technology behind it and how we read it. I guess basically, do you utilize, and I know, and I want to get to this, there's a reason why I'm going here, but I know that you've created an app. Is that part of what you're doing, is being able to read that frequency within that app? Is that kind of what you've kind of developed technology?
I think you'll understand this. So, of course, there's the hardware drivers. So there's the hardware of the app, and then there's the software. And so what I love about the app is it's infinitely, and I do mean infinitely, no holds barred, customizable if you write it in the right language so that the hardware, interprets it correctly, because we're just we're just these radio transmitters. Everything I've ever thought, everything I've ever done, even before this incarnation, is recorded. It's not recorded actually in your brain like they tell us. It's recorded in two places in your field. It's also recorded in what people refer to as the soul, which I'm actually moving more and more away from and more to just like a general consciousness. And there's a lot of reasons for that, mainly what we see when we scan people with the technology, because just the way that walk-ins and walk-outs, that's a whole nother subject we could talk about. At first, I didn't even believe in that concept. And then I started scanning people and everybody's like, oh, walk-ins are so rare. Or, they're not. I mean, my son-in-law he's been married to my daughter for 10 years. He's walked out and walked in 6 times. So there's been a new being consciousness in that body. And it's interesting because some of them know it. He'll say, I'm not the other one. Don't treat me like that. To my daughter. Thankfully, my daughter is who she is because it works for them. It wouldn't work in a normal 3D relationship, But, and so that's even that. There's a frequency of the old soul versus the new soul. All this can be programmed. And that's why a lot of fields, not everybody will have me on their show because they're actually afraid I'll do a scan on them, which sometimes I do live scans on people. They're afraid of what I'm going to reveal because my technology, the way I use it and the way I program it, and programming is, has to be, the right language again. But the way I use it, it's 100% accurate. And I love it. I use it as a psychic bounce. So I'm a very attuned psychic and very practiced and very good with my own abilities. But when I receive information, I'll sometimes create, a panel, what I call a panel, or program the software, and I'll check my own information against, what is it? It's neutral AI. AI doesn't care if I'm possessed or not. It doesn't. Sure. It doesn't care. It's just going to say you are or you aren't. And it's just brilliant. I mean, I can tell you animal stories. My dog woke up in the middle of the night, was going crazy, obviously in pain, hiding under the bed. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? I'm like, oh, wait, I have this app. I'm going to scan my dog on the app. And it said my dog had a herniated disc. And I'm like, I don't know where you got that. And I don't know why it just like clicked in and you're acting like this. And I took him to the emergency vet. X-ray showed he had a herniated disc. Well,
That's wild.
I know that because a herniated disc has a frequency.
Sure.
He's a radio tower. He's broadcasting it. And this app has can grab that and reflect it. So the limitation would be if the herniated disc wasn't programmed into the app. Of course, that's your limitation. The only limitation in the technology they've allowed us access to is the extent of the programming of items to bounce off of, if that makes sense.
That does.
Yeah, it does. Because there's still data points. So if you don't have data points,
That's it. That's what I'm saying. So, but if the data points are in here, I could tell you, people are like, I mean, I could spend 8 years, or 8 hours telling you, things you don't even know about yourself. Guess why? Because you said it. Because your thoughts, your subconscious energies that you're putting out, your subconscious fears have a frequency. And so even though you might not know what your subconscious programming or fears are about money or love or relationships or life, this can pick up. Some people are like, I don't feel afraid. And I'm like, yeah, well, you have fear of drowning and fear of being shot and fear of dying. And because these are all fears that have a specific frequency that are broadcasting from you,
Wow.
Wow.
That's so, I gotta admit.
It goes back to like everything. What
Yeah.
you put out in the world comes back to you, like manifesting. They talk with like the,
That's true too.
like even people that are in a negative space, sometimes they create their own ghost basically because they're
That's
constantly, like that's crazy.
Well, and I just, again, I'm so blown away by, honestly, because of the analytical mind that I have and the
Right.
the engineer behind me tells me that everything has a I know that. I know that everything, thoughts, pain has everything has a frequency. And if you could find a way like you have to it's almost like mapping the human genome. The second you get the primer to unpack everything and go, okay, kind of like a database, if this, then that, and all these other analytical things, it just, honestly, it blows me away because it is so scientifically known that is true, and I'll admit that is awesome. And, you don't have to be a big believer in paranormal or anything like that to know that those frequencies exist. We've seen it on just about anything has, well, again, anything has a frequency. I don't know why. I'm just really blown away by that whole thing. So
You're repeating yourself.
Yeah, right now my mind is trying to unpack everything. So that's
I love
wild.
that. Well, and because of my interest, I'm hardcore. I'm scientific. I'm hardcore. I'm an inventor. I'm way more scientific than I ever thought. But I'm also super woo-woo. So I'm one of the only people, I think I am the only person in the world that thought I'm going to use this hardcore scientific technology that people just use to, say, there's something, wrong with your esophagus, or you have built up anger, or you had an incident between 5 and 7, or you have abundance programming issues. Like, they've gone a little bit like woo-woo into consciousness, but I'm like, I'm going to dig deep into what I'm passionate about. I'm going to go after the hardcore answers. What supernatural beings are in my field? Like, here, I'll do a really quick, I'll run a really quick scan on one of you and tell you.
Sure.
Which one of you want to know which supernatural beings are in your field? I'll do that right now, live.
You want to do it?
Oh, I'm not afraid. Go for it.
Yeah, we're not afraid. Either one of us. Yeah.
Okay, what is your first name? I'm sorry, I didn't research you guys enough. I don't.
Okay.
What is your first name?
Nicole.
Nicole. Okay. So I'm just going to put Nicole's name in here, you guys, and then you don't have to take a picture, but because she's here, I'm going to grab a picture. And a picture this is why the Africans and different indigenous cultures didn't want their pictures taken.
Yep.
Guess what they knew?
Yeah.
Everything has a frequency, and they didn't want you to know their private business, so they didn't want you to take a picture of them. But she gave us our permission, so not that, believe me, I don't need anyone's permission, but I am going to take her picture with her permission, and it won't go anywhere. It'll just be stuck in my phone until I delete your profile, and I'm going to run her really quick through the database, and I'm going to be looking at asking the question, what supernatural beings, if any, maybe there aren't any, are either reaching out to you, constantly in contact with you, or around you, what types are beings. So that's the question I'm asking. And it'll take a minute because, as you know, it has to go through the little... No, it'll be fun. I should have done this before. I've actually never done this one live.
This is cool.
Usually I do like general scans, but I've never looked at this live. So I'm interested to see who's in your field. So we're scanning the database right now, which doesn't make for good live, which is why I don't often.
We're good.
Do scans.
No, trust me, our audience will be deeply keyed in on this, so that's good. Yeah, and while you're doing that, I think that I get that you're nervous. I truly do.
Like a demon.
Yeah.
Like, great.
But no, this is really good because it's like it kind of goes more to that whole point that there's everybody has a frequency, all these different things, and plus she gets to show her app live, which is pretty cool.
Well, I know there's stuff around me. I just don't know what.
Oh yeah,
That's the thing.
that's true. On that note, Kimberly, we unfortunately know there's stuff around us, but at least you'll be able to tell us a little bit more. But we have had just
my whole life.
Yeah, a cacophony of issues with things that have come around us and different things, which is why we started all this. But no, I'll admit I'm interested.
It's just taking. I have a lot of because I've had this for 10 years. I have a lot of data points to scan. So it's scanning. It's loading all the possibilities, which are like a lot. I have like 2,000 panels in here, and that's millions of items. So it'll take a minute, and mine just takes a lot. Probably my internet might not be the best either, since I'm on right now too. So it'll pop in a minute. Once it pops in, I'll have a lot of information. I'll know everything about you. Oh, it just popped in as I said that. Yay. Okay, so let's look. I'm excited. I'm excited. I haven't looked at this panel in a while, even for me. So here we go. Ooh, I know so much about you immediately just from this. So, okay, so the number one right now, and this is right now, I'm asking the question right now, military, and there's a reason I have that in supernatural influencers. I don't know if you guys have gone down this road. It's a deep rabbit hole, but my guess seeing military is number one, followed by occult. My guess is you're in the programs. You're in the My Labs programs. You're being taken by the military and abducted, either consciousness transferred or abducted in body. That's I know this app and how it works. That's a whole can of words, but this is lovely. This is high honor, Nicole. Sasquatch.
Look at you. You do like going outside a lot.
I love
high honor. So if you have not connected to the Sasquatch, they're wanting to connect to you. You could get contact, pictures. I mean, I'm telling you, they're probably related to you or had a relationship with you, not just this life, as a matter of fact. Like, that's big. That doesn't come up for very many people. That it comes up that you're memory wiped. Of course, we're all memory wiped, but that means you've been memory wiped in the last 24 hours. Here's following on the heels of Sasquatch elementals, which I consider sylphs, dogmen, little people, fairies, that whole group.
I want little people.
You're missing out. If you do not have a relationship that's very visceral, like I have a picture of a little person when I first moved in. He stood outside my back door for 3 days in military garb. He looks exactly like a 1 foot tall G.I. Joe. It's the absolute most amazing relationship. Because these beings are real. So these beings are all wanting to make a connection with you, Nicole. So it wouldn't take much.
Oh, look at that.
Time to go to Ireland and meet my leprechaun.
I could tell her a million things. I could tell her a million other things about herself if she wanted me to. But sometimes people. I had one guy. I was doing a show, and he wanted I did a scan. I don't do a lot of scans because people actually don't want to know, and they especially don't want it to be revealed always publicly. But he was sitting in his chair, and I was telling him things about himself, and he was getting more and more and more and more uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, the show got cut off. Funny how that happened. So I'm like, wow. I think he deliberately ended the show because he didn't want that going out, like the truth, know? And that's one thing that comes up. People have a lot of resistance because it's one thing to say, and you guys haven't had a scan with me, so you don't know. But when people get a scan with me, they're always like shocked. They're like, I had no idea what I was buying. I might not have bought it because like, I'm going to tell you what comes up and what comes up, that your oversoul wants to talk to you about. And, I always tell people when they get mad, I'm like, I can also tell you everything right about you, like everything in balance. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Yes, we do.
But why pay someone for that? Like, that's dumb. Like, you pretty much want to work on, hopefully, what's out of balance.
For sure. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah, I will say I was not expecting any. I was hoping for the little people, though.
The Bigfoot doesn't surprise me at all.
I didn't, other than the military abduction stuff, which is big and a whole huge rabbit hole, like I said, I didn't see, occult to me isn't demons. I have a separate line. There's no demonic around you right this second.
But witches, would that include witches?
Yes. you probably have, I mean, I'm just reading your field myself. I think there's like some black magic, and there might even be in your there's also some genetic stuff you've never cleared out. So there's some connections with some different groups and stuff that would have to be cleared. Like you're going to have that vibration in your field from your family line too.
This is so awesome because usually, honestly, I'm the one that's the guinea pig. But this is cool. This is awesome. Which, by the way, none of that surprises me at all. First of all, and I'm going to talk for her because, you know.
You're just going to talk about
I'm going to throw it out there. But she's into a lot of that stuff too. She's into natural healing. She's into all these different, anybody knows her knows that anyway. So it's not a big shock. Yeah. But
I'm a nature person. I don't like the city. I hate the city.
Oh, actually. That's awesome. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of Celtic blood, like genealogy-wise.
Yes. Well, I was picking up that family connection or that lineage, like blood lineage. One of the things I want to challenge you with, though, is you take care of everybody but yourself. I would really think about committing to some radical self-nurture and taking time to do what just lights you up without thinking, what lights the kids up, what lights up my family, my husband, my friends. Like, you are a caretaker and you take care of everybody else, but that's going to catch up with you. It's better to give yourself those little pieces of self-nurture, whether it's a massage, or I don't know what you like to do, or going off in the woods alone or having lunch with friends, but you really do you don't have a lot of self-nurture in your life right now that needs to play a bigger part.
It's right on the head, actually.
Oh, I'm so eating this up.
Not the first time I've been told that either, so, yep.
Right.
So we've got to ask, because I know our audience is going to want to know more about this. How do they get a hold of you? What is the best way for them to reach out to you and be part of this? Because this is freaking amazing.
It is.
So that's really cool.
It's so interesting.
But what's the best way?
Yeah, sure. My website, secret to everything spelled out to.com, and there's a contact form, and you can ask a psychic email reading, or you can have like a mini scan or a big scan, or we have secret space scans, we have soulmate scans, we have soul family scans, we have all kinds of scans. So kind of broken down into, or we have a comprehensive scan where you get a little bit of everything.
That's awesome.
I recommend it. I think it would be, it's fascinating to me.
I mean, I got to be honest, I can't think of any better way to put a capstone on this interview, because it's so cool. It's been a lot of fun. And again, I always say I'm usually the guinea pig, so it's kind of fun to watch you have some fun for a change on that.
It was fun.
I'm telling you, Nicole, if the Sasquatch choose you, they don't choose to reach out to very many people. You're missing out. They're the most amazing beings. I have the best relationship with them in the entire world. So you need to get to know the elementals and the fae and the little people and the Sasquatch. It'll light you up. It'll change your life.
Well, yeah.
That's crazy, because we just got done talking to Miguel.
Yeah.
Which
really?
We've got a friend who he does a channel. It's pretty
Sasquatch Theory.
It's got Sasquatch Theory, and he's pretty.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. And he's seen multiple.
Yeah.
And we have people in common to know the way we know each other, and and we just got connected. Not like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So that's a little.
I love that.
It's interesting.
Well, honestly, I can't think of a better way to end the conversation. That is
guys,
so awesome.
Thanks for letting me chitter chatter about everything, going all different directions.
No, honestly, the honor was
fun.
on the inside. It was a great time. And for our audience, I really do hope you reach out to her. And I think it's just it's definitely a lot of fun. And it learned a lot about yourself that you may or may not want to know. I could care less. I'll listen to anything. Like if someone were to tell me that, hey, you're just a raving lunatic, I got it. It's fine. That's okay.
I love it.
But again, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Well, thank you guys. You're lovely. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow. It's finally nice to see you get scanned or somebody do something to you for a change.
Yeah, I really have no words right now. I've got so many thoughts about it. Yeah, how can you not when somebody tells you stuff like that?
I know. Yeah, I mean
I mean, a lot of it doesn't go to like maybe this life. It could be
Sure.
other lives that we've lived, but it's
the Bigfoot thing though. I gotta admit, it makes sense.
it does because I'm a very woodsy,
She is
natural
woodsy.
person.
Yeah, she is. but
But it is interesting. But now I'm going to think about that every time I go out in the woods.
well, I mean, we've got
Have they been looking at me all this time? Wanting to talk
well,
to
maybe we need to start closing the windows and the blinds and stuff.
I know.
But look, she was a lot of fun to talk to,
Yeah.
and she's got a wealth of information. Guys, I highly recommend reaching out to her. She's got a lot of great stuff, and I know she has the classes too. And but yeah, I mean, take full advantage. And with the frequency stuff, guys, honestly, for me, it just makes a lot of sense for me
It
because
does
of the
make
way
sense.
the way I think about things.
Well, and I feel I'm almost at the point right now. Like I feel like a lot of doctors don't ever really help you with anything. I mean, some yes,
yeah.
but other things like go undetected for like a long time, especially
do.
like mental health. And could this be another an alternative way to go get help for things that maybe doctors can't see, or you're not having the symptoms so they don't look for it, because half the
Right.
time you have to have the symptoms before they'll start looking for it. They just
Yeah.
won't do it. Oh, well, your insurance won't cover it unless you do this. So this could be a way, like if you inherently know something's wrong with you,
Yep.
you could go and see what that picks up.
Yeah.
It would be, I mean, honestly,
Absolutely.
I would.
Yeah. I mean, if you go on WebMD, you're dying of everything. So I mean,
Well, yeah, you don't Google.
Yeah, you don't
don't
Google
ever
that.
Google anything.
trust me, that's a
You're
world.
dying
hurt.
of like diphtheria or something.
Yeah. I've got leishmaniasis. I've never even been out of the house. But anyway, guys, absolutely perfect. And yeah, reach out to her, look at her stuff. Try to get into those classes. She's obviously, as you guys can see, she's great to talk to. And,
Yeah, very kind.
But anyway, thanks for stopping by, guys, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.